Evening and welcome.
No.
It's our Tuesday program that brings you tailored nutrition and lifestyle education. Today, we are going to look at nutrition in adolescence. So over the last few weeks, we've been looking at nutrition throughout the life cycle. What I mean by that is looking at nutrition and the importance of nutrition in each life stage. What is life stage, life cycle? So from infancy to, we did, infant nutrition. We did maternal nutrition at some point. We've also looked at nutrition amongst older adults. We've actually looked at healthy eating among men as well. So for over the last 2 years, a topic we haven't yet covered is adolescent nutrition. And we all do know the challenges that comes with that particular stage of life. And so to help us discuss this topic today is Dr. Tokunbo, a registered nutritionist and a lecturer who is not new here. Most of us already know her. And I'm your host, Dr. Hibbah Osei-Kwasi, a registered nutritionist as well. So at the end of her presentation, we're going to have a discussion. So please do send us your questions. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, just write your questions and we will address them for you. If you're on the chat as well, please join the conversation, share your experience with us, any challenges or any suggestions or anything at all to do with this particular age group. So without much ado, I invite Dr. Tokunbo to start her presentation. Mute.
I've unmuted myself. Hello, everybody. Please pardon my voice. I will try to make it as clear as possible. So my name is Tokunbo, as introduced by Dr. Hibbah. Thank you very much for that, Hibbah. So today we're going to be looking at adolescent eating. We're going to look at desires versus what is required. We know that at that age, it is quite difficult for parents to have effective control of some aspects of this group of people. And sometimes feeding would be one of those things that parents might not be able to effectively control. So, but before we continue, who is an adolescent? So in the United Kingdom, the definition of an adolescent is somebody between the age of 11 and 21. And during this period, especially between 11 and 18, there is rapid growth. And sometimes it is the rapidness of that growth is as much, the speed is as much as growing from baby to infancy or from infancy to childhood. It could actually be at that rate or more in some cases. And as a result, nutritional requirements would have to match these, nutritional intake would have to match this speedy growth. And then it is important, things like energy, proteins, vitamins, and minerals are very, very essential during this period. And during this period also, physiologically, whether they eat healthy or not, physiologically, there's an increase in weight. And that's because the body composition changes. The lean body mass, that is the part of the body that does not have fat, increases. The skeletal muscle, their bones, it will increase. And whether they like it or not, their body fats will increase because their body fats are quite essential for some of their hormones and so on and so forth. So whether they like it or not, during this period, there is weight gain physiologically. So it is therefore essential that they are eating healthy to meet this requirement, to meet these nutritional requirements that would actually feed into their physiological needs, I would say. The energy is needed for activity level because during this period, there's a lot of activity. The boys will be engaged in one sport or the other. The girls will also have one thing or the other that they're doing. Physically, the boys will be playing ball and all that. So there is an increase in the activity level. the basal metabolic rate, and as a result, would also increase. So there is need for adequate energy intake during this period. Now, protein is needed to maintain and help to accrue the lean body mass. Again, lean body mass is a part of the body that does not contain fat. So you need to take more, they need to consume enough protein, especially high quality protein, to help with the management, or to help to meet the requirements of this body maintenance and the development of new cells. Carbohydrates, as we know, please bear with me, my son is here, just please bear with me. Carbohydrates, as we know, is our major source of energy. So it is expected that they consume up to 50% of their energy intake, of their food intake, is meant to be carbohydrates. And fiber is essential. It cannot, the importance cannot be overemphasized. The type of fat is also important at this time. And for females especially, iron must be adequately consumed, especially because they will be starting their menstrual cycle. Now, because of the rapid growth of the skeletal bones, the skeletal cells, it is very important there is adequate intake of calcium and vitamin D. Calcium and vitamin D work hand in hand. It is possible that you are consuming calcium. If you do not have enough vitamin D, you're going to have skeletal problems. If you're exposing yourself to a lot of, this is not everybody, if there's a lot of exposure to sunlight, but inadequate intake of calcium, they're still going to have skeletal problems. And in this case of the adolescents, because of the rapid growth in their bones, the rapid increase in the development of their skeletal cells, there's need for adequate consumption of calcium, because that can only be consumed, and then the adequate exposure to vitamin D, to sun for vitamin D. And being in this environment, the kind of what do I call it now? The kind of weather that we have, there's limited supply of vitamin D of the sun. So, however, as long as it is bright, then it's encouraged that they play outside as much as possible. And then during the cold, of course, there's a lot of covering, but as much as possible, if you can release some parts of their skin to help absorb this the vitamin D from the sun, that's going to be very helpful. Now, let us look at what they usually consume. Now, we've looked at the nutrients that are very essential. Let's not forget, typically calcium, iron, especially for women, for girls, vitamin D, and then the healthy fats, carbohydrates, and very, very important, proteins. But what do they eat? According to the NDNS data is like a survey that looks at what people in the United Kingdom eat. And it gives us an idea of what people eat across different age groups. Now, emphasizing on between 11 and 18, who are the adolescents. Between 2016 and 2019, this is the latest NDNS data that we have now. They had the highest consumption of sugar-sweetened soft drinks. So we're looking at the likes of Coke, the likes of Lucozade, the likes of Mountain Dew, and all other carbonated and even uncarbonated sugar-sweetened drinks. The girls, now that's for the males and females. Now the girls had the highest amount of free sugar consumption in relation to the energy requirements. Remember, we said this in the past, that ideally what is recommended is your free sugar. When you're looking at free sugar is also referred to as added sugar. So sugar in cakes, sugar in biscuits, sugar in fruit juices, actually also, because you would have squeezed out the juice from the fruits, and you would have made the sugar in the cells more available. Hence, they have called the sugars in fruit juices free sugars. So the sugars in fruit juices, the sugars in all confectionaries, as long as it is added sugar, or as long as it is squeezed out from the fruits, those are the added sugars, and those are the free sugars. We're not supposed to take more than 5%. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to take less than 5% of our total energy intake. The girls between 2016 and 2018 consumed more than double. Now, the saturated fats, which we know is the unfriendly, it is typically called unhealthy fats, but you see, it has its own role in the body. We cannot not consume it. We just need to consume it in small quantities. Ideally, we're not supposed to take more than 10% of these on our total energy intake. Let me try and put that into perspective. That is like consuming for a typical adult woman, that's like taking no more than a tablespoon of butter, ideally, kind of a thing for saturated fats. But you see, for the adolescents, they have told us that between 2016 and 2019, they consumed 12.6% of their total energy. And most alarming one is the fact that only 4% of adolescents consumed enough fiber. Only 4%. So we can imagine the kinds of foods that they consume. A lot of studies have suggested that they do a lot of takeaways. They eat a lot of fast foods. They eat from lots of fast food joints instead of homemade meals. And there are many factors that would influence this. So why do adolescents eat the way they do, or why do they eat what they eat? Okay, there are so many factors that would influence an adolescent's intake. And unfortunately, a lot of these factors, they cannot control. A lot of them. So let's look at this table, or this picture. So we have sociocultural factors. And in sociocultural factors, two things are very important: availability and accessibility. They cannot particularly control that. That is part of the food system for wherever it is that they are living. And in some cases, they have no control, not all the time. Sometimes they have no control of where they are living if they are still living with parents. They may be able to control where they live when they go to school, when they go to the university, in which case it is still restricted to where their institution is, and proximity to their institution, accessibility to institution will influence where they are going to live. So they don't have total control of food that is available and accessible where they are living. However, another environmental factor is family. We're going to talk about that a bit more, but family and school also have significant influence on what these children eat. In some schools, in some universities, I lecture in the university, when you go to our canteen, you will see all kinds of foods that are available. And it is important that all kinds of food are made available for inclusion, for variety, for all that. So the question is, how many students will intentionally make the healthy choices? Now, we'll talk about that a bit later. But the hint is that what has happened within the family, studies have shown, will significantly influence their choices when they're independent. So we'll get back to that. But then there are a few individual factors. Even though they are called individual factors, some of them they might not be able to control. They might not. But before I talk about the individual factors, let's talk about the moderating factors. So looking at money. You know, at that age, some of them are still completely dependent on parents. So it is what the parents give them that they have access to. Some of them have started work, but then the amounts given to paid to under 18 is not the amount paid to over 18, or is it 16? 16. The amount paid to under 16 is not the amount paid to over 16, even though when they get to the store, they are buying the item for exactly the same price, regardless of the age. So the economic power really, really matters, and it actually influences how they are, what and how they will eat. Another factor is whether they live in an urban area that is really, really westernized, or whether they're living in a rural area. Chester, where I live, is not rural, but is not as urban as London, for example. So we don't have, for an ethnic minority student that comes to University of Chester, for example, to study an undergraduate program, there will be limitation, especially an ethnic minority that has not particularly acculturated. That means taking on board the UK style of eating. Their food will be a bit restricted because the cultural foods are not very readily available, and when they're available, they're quite pricey. So that is something they don't have influence on. But then we also have individual factors. We have self-efficacy. We have subjective norms, things like what they just believe about a particular food, or what they believe should happen, or what should happen. And then we have habits and the strength of such habit. They have what they perceived as this is safe or this is not safe. And then their taste buds would all these factors will then inform their dietary behavior. These were factors that were identified when this study was done in the in Ecuador. But you see, it is very, very generalizable, as it can be. We can, even as us as Africans, we can actually relate with these factors. And I'm sure we can remember when we were, for those that are no longer adolescents, we can remember that when we were adolescents, these were things that actually influenced what we consumed. In some cases, we had to completely rely on what mommy or daddy provided in the house. We had no say. That was what it was in my home. But there are also psychosocial influences, which are very, very, very strong. We have the social media. All kinds of information can be found in social media. The good, the bad, the junk, the true, the facts, the untrue. And you see, as long as the person is trending, that's what matters, trending. As long as the person is trending, our teenagers will follow the person and will practically believe whatever the person says, whether it is true or not. So social media is a factor that strongly influences what and how our teenagers eat. Now, by this stage of their development, they become very, very aware of their body. They're aware of their body sizes. They're aware of their looks. And you see, acne is part of growth and maturity. And unfortunately, there are some of our teenagers that have lots of acne on their faces, and that becomes a problem because it's body image. And then they are looking for what and how they can make these acne to go. And they start to look at social media looking for anything. And then dieting becomes fashion. Please, do we have mothers here who have teenagers as children. Mine is far from being a teenager. I'm wondering what will happen when it becomes one. Do we have mothers who have teenagers as children?
I don't know. Maybe you should just ask your question and we see if people can.
I would like to hear the kind of comments that the children make when they tell them that it's a particular kind of food that they're eating, especially if the food is mainly vegetables. What do they say? I was working with, well, she is not a teenager, she's still a young child. I was working with a mom who went to school runs yesterday, and the mom was telling the child that, oh, today you're having roast vegetables with something. And the child said, nope, I'm not having that. No, you know? And I could just picture the child when the child is a teenager, what kind of response that she would have. So do we... I
can share something. My kids are also far from being teenagers, but yeah, I have nieces and nephews. So there's one niece of mine. I think that's quite the opposite of the example you're sharing. So ever since she became a teenager, she has been, maybe because of the body image thing, she doesn't eat. In fact, I tell her she counts her rice. You know, she doesn't want to put on weight. So yes,
we will get to that.
Healthy. Yeah. So my experience with her is that she eats healthy in terms of the vegetables. She'll eat vegetables. She will not eat, she will not consume sugary drinks. But then it's how much she's consuming that's the issue.
Good.
That's the experience.
Very, very, very.
I don't know if we have anyone else.
Anybody else that wants to say something? If you have teenage children, I would really like to hear from you. I would really like to learn from you, actually. Because
Martha put something in the chat. Let's see what she says. She says she has a teenage grandson that's not like eating much vegetables and fruits. Yes.
That sounds about right. At that age, they become very, very... We think the young children are selective. No, at least the young children are selective, but we still have a lot of control. You know, we can still say, nope, that's what you're eating. And they sit down, they eat it grudgingly, but they will eat it. But teenagers, no. If they say that I'm not eating that, and that's it. They won't eat it. And you can't force them.
Maybe teenagers, yeah, in the UK, but I still remember when I was a teenager, I would eat what I'm told to eat.
What you are told to eat in Nigeria. Well, in Nigeria, too, when we were growing up, I would eat whatever I'm told to eat.
You didn't have a choice.
But then you see,
yeah,
my mom would say, if you don't eat it, then there's nothing else.
Exactly.
Teenagers these days. Yeah, somebody else, Hanifat wants to say something.
Yes, Hanifat, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, love.
Good evening.
Hi, Hibbah.
Hi, Hanifat.
So I think my own experience is just different because I'm a dietitian. So I see them on a daily basis. It's quite a challenging one now. And, you know, they already know what they want. You know, you'll be talking to a patient sometimes, like a teenage patient, and they will be telling you that, I know that has 50 calories, and they are very correct, you know. I'm like,
wow. They know how much.
They know.
Sincerely, they know, and they will be right about it. And, you know, because the way things are in the UK, food label and everything, so they're able to get all this information. And I have a 12-year-old as well, which is, I have a son, so I know how it is. You know, I don't want to eat this, I don't want to eat that. You know, I know how we usually argue on what is, mommy, no, you can't tell me this. You know, it's it is what I want. I'm like, no, this is going to be good for you. So it's a different thing. Like I told Eva yesterday, over my years of practice, it's been different for me because I was practicing in Nigeria before I came to the UK. So it's been a different experience for me. Yeah. So I can't understand where Tokunbo is coming from. It's totally different from both.
It is.
Irrespective.
There must be something we can do, yeah. And hormones play a very, very significant role here. And let's not forget, remember I said that there are factors that they really cannot control. They have more factors that they cannot control compared to young children and adults. There are some factors that we cannot control also, but there are a lot more factors that we can control. Do you get what I mean?
Definitely.
But
Yes,
they don't have as much control. In fact, I was reading somebody and the person was asking, so who is responsible for a teenager's food intake? Is it the mom? Is it
or is it school?
Or is it the school?
yeah. What we usually do in terms of especially when we're dealing with patients with eating disorder with children, we do like a family-based therapy. Depends on the age of the child. So because mostly we still believe that they still need that support from their parents.
From the parents.
Yeah.
We'll get to this. We'll get to the eating disorder. But you see, at that time, that's why dieting, if you ask a teenager that is very, very woke, that's the word, a teenage girl that is very woke will tell you the diet that is in vogue. Will tell you the social media,
the calories and everything.
They will tell you the calories they will tell you that this particular influencer has recommended this for that. They will tell you. They will tell you. And so, and it feels like if they are not aware, they become, they're not
left out. Yeah.
Exactly.
They're not woke.
Exactly. They're not. So the dieting then becomes, and they engage in what you call yo-yo dieting, because it is the dieting that is in vogue that they are interested in. So they'll do it for the period that it is in vogue, and then that's it. And then they try another one, and then that's it. And there are problems with this yo-yo dieting. Yo-yo dieting could actually significantly contribute to being obese later, and they're not even aware of it. And and also they develop a bad relationship with food. They do not understand the importance. Remember, I said saturated fat is sometimes described as bad fat, but we also need it. It has its own role in our body. But because it has been called a bad fat, you would see some adolescents that would be seriously working hard to make sure they don't eat it.
They don't eat it. Anyway, and let me just say this, Tokunbo. So I've invited Hanifa, who is also a dietitian. So one of these sessions, we are going to have a special edition of eating disorders. And so she'll come and share her experience on that with us. But there's another comment in the chat box that says, Nusrat says, with fruits and vegetables, we did a project as a whole family. And so my son, for the whole family, as my son hates eating them, he's enjoying them now. So you have to involve the whole family. Thank you.
I was going to, it's part of things that I would say at the end, that I would get to later. But thank you very much for saying that. That just validates what I was going to say, actually. So, like I said, they develop a very bad relationship with food, and it is called disordered eating. So it is either they are eating too much or they're not eating enough. That is what it becomes. Another problem is the physical activity, which we cannot particularly ignore, because of the social decadence and the way the westernization and all, even though the adolescence age group they're supposed to be the most active of the age groups, studies have actually suggested that they are not physically active enough. And if we look at this picture, we can see that Blacks are really, really affected by this. After then, the Asians, but then not both genders. It's basically the Asian women, and that is a lot more cultural for them than anything else. But for Blacks, both our boys and our girls are not active enough. And there's something else that they develop. You're muted, Hibbah.
Yeah, I wondered if you looked at why, even though we are not talking about physical activity per se, I wondered if there was you had any thoughts on why?
Why the Black people, Like I said, I think it has a lot more with social decadence. I would have loved to know where they collected most of their data from. Because if they collected it from a place like London, I can understand, because of the high crime rates And whether we like it or not, a lot of these have been associated with Black ethnic minorities. So I can imagine parents being very protective of their children and not wanting them to play outside. Do you get what I mean? So they become excessively, and then they're happy to buy their PlayStation 2 million or whatever it is, just to keep them within the home as much as possible.
Now that you say this, another thought that occurs to me is, the housing system in London. Well, the people I know all kind of live in these flats. So, there's
less areas,
less walking, and, people just move and then get onto the bus. Okay. All right. That was just
exactly. That's another thing. The bus systems, the bus the network system in the UK is quite good. The bus network is quite good. And for my house, for example, I just step out of my gate, I go on the bus. Except I'm intentional about it to now deliberately say I want to walk 2 bus stops away before getting on the bus. That is then I can do that. Otherwise, I just get out of my gate and
you just get onto. And TK, sometimes I feel like it's also a bit cultural. I don't have the evidence to back that, but I say that based on my own behaviors and the people. So when I was in Sheffield, and I used to commute from Manchester to Sheffield to uni, I get to the train station, I'll take the tram. But my white colleagues who were also commuting would walk. And it was a 20, it's now that I've changed. Now I do a lot more walking.
And that's because like you said, it's very cultural. That's because since they were little children, their parents would take them to the park. They would walk and run and would allow them to express themselves physically as much as possible. But African parents, we don't
do that.
We don't tend to do that. We are very, very protective of our offsprings. And another thing is that just occurred to me. The schools and catchment areas, it is the school that is closest to your area that you are more likely going to have access. Do you get what I mean? So the opportunity for you to actually get on the bus or walk some distance before you get to that may also be,
In spite of that, the white people still make the time to do the walking.
It's because, like you said, it is cultural. They are intentional about it. Many homes, they are quite intentional about it. And look at Africans, especially if we're first generation migrants. I never for one day saw my parents exercise.
So
it wasn't a cultural thing, It was when I got here that the idea of big feet, whatever, exercise, came up, So, and of course, the course that I studied, so then I have to be physically active, to join the culture here. But that here, the moment the child starts to walk, I watch videos, the kind of things that they allow the child to do, to explore, the way they allow them to learn the motor skills, the whatever skills, it's quite fascinating, which is not something that we do culturally.
I think we have a lot to do as mothers.
We have a lot to learn. We have a lot of things that we need to change as African mothers, actually. And another thing that they do, another habit that they pick up is drinking of alcohol. Now, in this case, the white population, you have a lot more of them consuming alcohol compared to the ethnic minorities. But then, looking at Asia and the Black population, our teenagers are more likely to drink alcohol compared to the Asian. Yes, Hibbah.
I just had a comment and I think that's interesting, so I'd like to share it.
Okay.
Someone in the group says she disagrees with us with respect to the cultural aspect of walking. She said, I walked my life out in Nigeria with my parents. So
okay, and I can explain. Now, there's a very, very large economic divide in Nigeria. So you're either rich and influential, rich, or you're not rich. There is very, very small population of people in the middle class. So for those that are below the middle class, the lower class, they would have done a lot of walking, a lot of jumping on the buses, a lot of, like that. But then for those in the few in the middle class and those in the very, very high class, yeah, they are very likely going to be chauffeur driven everywhere.
And I agree with you, because the person has added a few more comments. She says, I think it's an individual or family thing. My parents were rich. I agree with you totally, but I also agree with the fact that there's that socioeconomic divide. And so this is the Ghanaian experience. So the people who were rich, you would always see them in cars, and and it's still there. The fact that rich people in our countries are the ones who consume more of those unhealthy things. It's still there. And there's a lot of research to show that, so it might be that some families are more exposed and understand the fact that rich, but still, are concerned or understand the need for people to do physical activity and all of that. But it still doesn't, we are not talking based on research evidence here. Some of these things are anecdotal evidence, and I believe most of you on the call would agree that back in Africa there are lots of people in that high income bracket who would not walk, would not walk to school. Their parents would drop them, and then there was the people who didn't really have it. But that doesn't change the fact that it's not generalizable. So yes, I'm taking your point.
Yeah, well, let's say it's not general. I think we don't have, I think it's generalizable. It's just that we have the population of families that were educated and intentional about it was very small. Not that they were not there, but they were quite
very not
small. Yeah, they were quite small. So we cannot say that the information is not generalized. It is, but we just had for every study there will be anomalies, so those were the anomalies that I would say. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for those comments.
Thank you. Yes. So what are the effects of these behaviors? Then we have obesity, we have eating disorders, and we have non-communicable diseases. I'm not going to talk about obesity because we have overflogged obesity here. Yeah. But it's about the same principle for adulthood now. But let's look at eating disorders. 95, the heartbreaking thing is about 95% of those who suffer eating disorders are adolescents. 95% of them. And majority of them are females. Just about 25% males. So let's not think that males cannot have eating disorders. They do have eating disorders. Especially, I was reading somebody's proposal, and it was that I opened my eyes. We're looking at sports amongst boys, and I didn't realize how competitive it can be until I actually read that document. And it gets as far as, when you're looking at how fit they are, then they start to think about what they're supposed to eat, what they're not supposed to eat, food becomes a big deal because they're competing with their peers. And if they are not careful, they start to have a bad relationship with food. Eating disorder always starts with a bad relationship with food. And let's not get it twisted. I was looking out to see what percentage of people the prevalence of eating disorders among Black ethnic minority. Initially, I saw in the United States, and it does say that 50% of African American teenagers actually have bulimic. They are bulimic, and that is a form of eating disorder. But let's come home to the United Kingdom. There is a 216% increase in the people that have been diagnosed with eating disorders amongst the Black ethnic minority. So let's not think that no, it's not a Black thing. It is becoming a Black thing. It is becoming a Black thing. 216, that is a lot. One more percentage, far more. This is like 6 times the percentage of the white population. So it is becoming our thing. So what do we do? somebody has answered the question. I saw this and I was just fascinated. This study just looked at the impact families have on the food choices of the adolescents. But you see, I had to conclude by saying that it is not what they do during the adolescence period, but what family does before the children become adolescents. That is what matters. I read an article and they were looking at what influences your food choices. We were looking at teenagers. Some of them said, oh, that the food is cheap. That's why they go for it. But you see, I was pleased to see that a good percentage, about 40% of the population that they looked at actually said that they looked at it based on health reasons. So they made the choice that they made. It was, we were looking at those who eat fast food. You know, in some cases, in some fast foods, they have the healthier choices. It might be a bit more expensive, but the healthier choices are there. And this participant said they made those choices, even though more expensive, but they knew they were healthier. I know, how did they know? Because the parents had impacted that knowledge and discipline in them already. What we do as parents, let's not think that we're wasting time. We're not, actually. When those children are, and at this stage, they're they're looking forward to being on their own. The independence is a big deal to them. So you will see them being very, very enthusiastic to go to school, you know, and depending on the foundation that we have laid while they are home with us, that would then determine, in some cases, what they will carry on with. Now, I am not disregarding the influence of peers. Oh, that can be very, very strong. I am not disregarding the influence of social media. I have mentioned that in previous slides. But we still have this percentage of adolescents that have chosen to just continue with what they're very cultural, you know, not that they have a better reason for it, but they're very, very culture and home values are very important to them. So they'd rather work with it. They'd rather continue with it. And studies actually support that. So maybe like who said, I don't remember the name of the, involving them in selection of food and cooking can, in fact, I don't think there's anything that is more important than that when we are looking at the influence of family on adolescents' food choices. And okay, there was something that just crossed my mind. I can't imagine, it just disappeared. Oh my God, it just disappeared. Oh dear me.
It will come back, don't worry. Go back to the next point.
Anyway, so, which then makes it very important for parents themselves to be educated, because there is no way you can teach what you don't know. You can't give what you don't have. So the education of the parents, of the guardians, or the carers, they're also very, 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 very important. And like earlier said in the previous slides, healthy eating is the same. That's it for children. It's about the Eat Well guide, making healthy choices. Fruits and veg, we cannot compromise. It is still a minimum of 5 portions for everybody. But then we have been told some of the nutrients that are very, very important: the calcium, the iron, you know, the protein. So in which case, you're laying a bit more emphasis on the protein, calcium sources, on foods that have these nutrients, the calcium sources, the fiber, the iron. If for any reason the child has chosen to be vegetarian, so in which case, especially the girls, in which case their main source of iron will be plant-based, then they need to take orange juice with it, just to help to maximize the iron absorption from the plant source, And then it is very important that they take lots of fruits and veg. They take their milk, even though we're looking at low-fat milk. So it's either semi-skimmed or skimmed milk. Then they want to look at it, consume a lot of brown bread now, or brown pasta or things like that. Now, I mentioned acne before earlier, and acne studies have suggested. Now, there was a study about acne, about people with the Eskimos people, and it was suggested that increased consumption of ultra-processed foods actually increased the risk of developing acne amongst the population. Now, those are people living in the very, very cold region. I won't be surprised if the cold region also could have influenced the development of these acne, but in a positive way. Because what happens is there is excessive secretion of oil. That's what happens, excessive secretion of oil. And then the organisms, the bacteria of the skin will now feed on these oils and then cause there to be acne. But you see, in a temperate, in the very, very cold region, there is minimal activity of the microorganisms anyway. But where the temperature is ideal for microorganisms, so it is possible that people in tropical region, the teenagers in tropical region, could be actually a lot more prone to these acne compared to those that are in the temperate region. So, which is another reason why healthy eating is very, very important. What we want to achieve is for them to have a good relationship with food. The quantity matters. There is no need to eliminate any nutrients in the food as long as you are eating the right quantity and they are physically active. It's when you start to hear, no, I don't want to eat fat. No. Then as parents, we should keep an open eye and just start to check, could they be beginning to have a bad relationship with food? And that is when we now start to find a way of intervening before it then becomes a form of eating disorder. And yeah, I think I've shared this many times here. So that's it.
That's it. I like the fact that your last slide was the physical activity again, because there's another comment in the chat that says, we Blacks are busy working and don't have time to walk around with our children. The weather too does not help. And yet it's the same weather as well for all of us. Yeah, but thank you so much for that comment. Okay, thank you, Dr. Tokunbo. Can you stop sharing your slides so we can question? So the floor is now open. Do we have any comments, questions, contribution?
I think I want to respond to Nusrat.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know you really don't need to go outside? Especially these children.
Nusrat knows that because she was on the TLC intervention. So she knows that you really don't have to go out when the weather is bad. Yeah.
Just allowing my son, I just allow him to run around as long as he's safe. The physical activity, that boy, if I put
your son is not a teenager.
I know. I'm just like I said, it's to imbibe the culture. That's the aim. To imbibe the culture. If you imbibe the culture, so many times on campus, the students would immediately finish their lecture. They've changed to what's it called?
Yeah, gym.
Up to the gym.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder, you're fit now. You're fit already, and they're like, I just do it.
Yeah.
Because that is what they've grown up.
True.
some of them, even if they're not in the gym, they run. You just see them, they're running. And they're running with their friends, sometimes with their friends, which would then encourage them. And they go for one sporting thing
or the other.
But I believe that it is something that has already started within the family. I see my son doing something. In fact, we see him we call him future Usain Bolt, because the way he runs, he makes sure when he finishes eating, he burns the thing, and then he feels light and goes to bed.
That's good. Yeah, indeed. Future Usain Bolt.
I look forward to that.
There's this thing I've shared here before, but just for the benefit of those who haven't heard it. So my brother is really, I have one of my brothers is really, really, really lanky, stalky, skinny, and very tall. And he likes to exercise. He lives in Ghana. And he said there was a day he was running. Then one elderly Ghanaian man called him, "Gentleman, like very concerned. Why are you doing this to yourself?" So, because as far as he's concerned, he's too skinny to be running around, So it's something I've been sharing, that's the mentality we sometimes have, that until you are overweight or obese, then you shouldn't really do anything about it, Anyway.
And then it doesn't have to be running. The aim is just physically active.
No, but if he wants to run, it's okay. You
if you want to run, that's fine. But if you think, I don't like running. I don't like running. But I love to walk. And I love to dance. So I'm happy.
Okay. So another comment, self-discipline is very key too. My husband started running in old age, and because he has disciplined himself, he's doing it. True. Self-discipline is also good because, now that we're already old, you need to be self-disciplined. No one can really teach you these skills. Yes. Thank you for that. Do we have any questions, thoughts on this very...
Just a contribution from me.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tokunbo, for the wonderful presentation. I think I'm just going to add to the physical activities part of it. It's actually, it's not being obese or being fat. Like everyone needs to be physically active, because sometimes your cholesterol might even be high and you might be very skinny. Sometimes you get some patients that are skinny, they're even underweight and they've got high cholesterol. I mean, that's bad cholesterol. So, so physical activities is just good for everybody,
it's good for everybody.
All stages, at all ages. So it's very important we try to imbibe whatever you are able to do. It's very key.
And thank you, Hanifa. We need to do a bit more research when it comes to physical activity, because when we did the intervention 2 years ago, we got everybody walking. So people who are on the call know that we did this intervention, 6 months intervention, and everybody was striving to get 10,000 steps. I started it again at the beginning of the year, and the motivation has just gone down. Only few people were able to get 10,000. We did it for 12 weeks. And people have stopped walking. So that's really something on my heart that I might get someone to look into. Why are we not keeping ourselves fit as Black people?
I think for me, it's not about getting 10,000 steps a day. It's about taking it slowly at your own pace, what you can do, what you're able to achieve, because consistent is very important than you doing it and not doing it. If you're able to achieve 3,000, but 3 times, 4 times a week, that makes a lot of difference in your health than you focusing on 10,000
and then not even achieving it.
And which was what we did in the Tokunbo. You remember
that was what we did at the TLC. As long as you're active, more active than you used to be, it did not matter if you
didn't matter. It was just to motivate. Some people wanted to get it, some people didn't. But what we're focusing on was progress, because there were people who were not walking at all. There were people who were not doing any form of physical activity. So for those people, it was just making progress. But the point I made reference to that, is that all of those people most of them have stopped now. That's the point.
The motivation, whatever it was that was motivating
them. So not
no longer there.
3,000 people have all stopped. I don't know about the diet. I'll go back to that and see if people are still keeping to the portion sizes and all the stuff we're doing together. I don't know, but I can say for a fact that people have stopped. walking, the people in the intervention group that we did a couple of years ago?
If you really look at it, you can see that in form of trying to lose weight or weight loss, our health diet is very key, because diet is about 80% and exercise is just 20%. That's why you see some people actually watching their intake and they're losing weight. But generally, exercise is good because it's good for mental health, it's good for art, and it's good for a lot of things. So that's what exercise, but it's not that maybe if you're a footballer, maybe you do a very extensive exercise, then you can be saying you can, getting to lose a lot of calories from there. But diet is very key. That's why you see people that they're dieting and they're losing weight without no exercise. So not everyone likes exercise. That's why it's very important that you just maintain what you're able to do. Just don't go overboard about it. Just do what you are able to do.
Something, at least do something.
Do something.
Yes. Any exercise is better than no exercise.
Than no exercise, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let me bring it back to our adolescents.
Yeah.
To their nutrition. Any comments? So that niece of mine, and she will not be happy if she hears me talking. Well, I didn't mention her name, and I have so many nieces. So, so she's grown up. She's an adult now, and still eating like that.
I think with the adolescent nutrition, because currently, like I said, I've been working with the eating disorder adolescents and adults in a couple of months now, and it's opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I think it's quite a bit challenging in the UK because here they have apart from the family-based therapy, apart from the fact that they have the family to support them, they the kids here are more outspoken. They have free, compared to where we come from in Africa, that you can just do whatever you can't do whatever. You are forced to do a lot of things. There's this stigmatization in Africa. There's nothing. They don't still believe before I left Nigeria, we still don't believe there's anything like eating disorder. It's still underdiagnosed, but definitely there is eating disorders, and our children are having it. But because of that stigmatization, people still see it as a big deal. But here, I like the fact that we're taking it seriously and we don't joke with it, because at the end of the day, they're losing a lot of nutrients and it's affecting their day-to-day activity. So that's why this government is not taking it lightly. So what we usually do, according to what Dr. Tokunbo said earlier on, the family-based therapy is really what we usually encourage, because when I do my clinic with a lot of them, it's usually a therapeutic relationship, because you can't gain anything without not involving your family. So we call it like a therapeutic relationship. So between you, your client, and the family. So it's usually family. So like what Dr. Tokunbo said, we advise them depending on, because definitely it's an individual treatment. What works for him might not work for B. So you look at what this particular, because some of them is usually from school. From the adolescent in the UK is usually, according to studies, is usually from school, usually from bullies, usually, maybe their friends, their peer calling them fat, their peer calling them pig, different kind of name calling, so that's where the pressure comes from. So, you just have to take it, look at how this person has been affected to know the treatment. But sincerely, the treatment is not the same for same patient. It's usually different for different patients. Some within 6 months, because it's like I said, it's a therapeutic relationship. It's a slow one. Sometimes you will be working with an adolescent and you will be seeing improvement. Sometimes it comes down again. The graph comes down to 0. You'll be like, oh, I thought I've taken you out of this, but the adolescent is still not there yet. So, it drops back again. Maybe they were exposed to that thing that was, that initially triggered it, And sometimes you just, you're there for years and they're still attending therapy and they haven't seen any results. So for me, it has really, it has really made me understand that, this thing it's not like a fast thing. It takes time. It takes time. With eating disorders, it takes time. And these days, it's not all of them that are being there's something we call disordered eating and eating disorder. It's actually two different
Hanifa,
things.
you're already doing your talk now.
Yeah, disordered eating is.
That's to tell you how passionate.
Because this is what I do on a daily basis. So,
I know. I don't want you to spoil that, because please, I want you to come back for a session on disordered eating and eating disorders. As you can see, she's passionate about this topic. So please don't spoil it yet.
No problem.
But yeah, disordered eating and eating disorders,
are did a good job already. So
yeah,
there are two different things. Disordered eating is just having a bad relationship with food. It could be this is disorder, you're likely going to be losing weight, likely. Not all of them, but you're going to be likely. But disordered eating, you can be eating and just be adding weight. As long as you have a bad relationship.
Even trying to lose weight is termed disordered eating, because definitely you're not eating what you're supposed to be eating.
Yeah. When you're doing all kinds of diet. Yeah. If it is on an unhealthy weight loss diet, then it is disordered eating, yes.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, there's a lot to talk about under adolescent nutrition. We started broadly adolescent nutrition, and we can go on and on and on. So yes, luckily we are going to get Hanifa maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. She's yet to confirm that. But I'd like to say a big thank you to Dr. Tokunbo. As everyone can see, that was really insightful as always. You could see her passion for teaching. And so thank you so much, Dr. Tokunbo. There's a last comment. So Marcia says, I have a dog, which I got when I stopped working. And so I walk for 30 minutes to 1 hour, also exercise 3 times per week.
That's
fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Before I hand it over to Shekinah, I think next week we have another insightful session by Dr. Sufaya Amenya, and she's going to talk about her research focuses on nutrition and brain health. So something about nutrition and for brain health or something like that. So please do join us, because dementia and all of those things are on the rise within our community. So please do join us next week for another insightful and engaging session. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying on for the engagement, and I hope to see you next week. I hand it over to Shekinah now. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hibbah. I think you pretty much summed it all. Thank you, Dr. Tokunbo, for joining us. Thank you so much. And if anyone wants the slides as well, please message us at health@CAHN. We are happy to share them over if you want to look into them further. And yeah, so next week, like Dr. Hibbah said, we will have another session. And until then, we will see you next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.